This week's guest in the Honky Tonk Time Machine has written most of my favorite country songs, and chances are he's written a few of your favorites too. He's won BMI, NSAI, and CMA awards for his songwriting, but has also put together an outstanding recording career. I'm especially excited for this one, welcoming Skip Ewing as our newest member of the Honky Tonk Time Machine. Skip, thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, Glenn, that's a great name. I'm happy to be. I'm proud of that. I'm proud to be part of it.
I was pretty proud of it too, to be honest with you. Yeah, the Honky Tonk Time Machine. And what's interesting, Skip, is that you've written songs for a lot of our members: Colin Ray, Brian White, Doug Stone, Sammy Kershaw, Diamond Rio, and Tracy Bird, and now I know it's going to be one of your honors in life. You're officially a member too.
Nice. That's great, man. Thanks, Glenn.
I want to talk to you about a bunch of stuff today, but first and foremost, we're getting close to the holidays. J.R. Hughes, your music promoter for your new Christmas song, sent me this song, Whenever a Child is Born. And we're going to be playing the heck out of this come Christmas time. This is a really good song. You could use it for Christmas, but really, it's good any time of year, I think.
We didn't actually set out to write it as a Christmas song, and then it just seemed like that was the way to go, and that was the sentiment. So for me, I kind of felt like it needed to be put out as a Christmas song, and then folks could take it however they liked. Yeah,
my thoughts exactly. So what was it that inspired you to sit down and write something like this and tackle this specific subject matter?
Sure. Well, the song itself, it basically kind of, it reminds us, I guess is a good way to say it, that anytime a child is born, it's a miracle, and I like to think that God is there whenever a child is born, and that's where that came from, that the idea came from. And I had Aaron Barker was going to write with me that day, and I said, Aaron, this is really, I know this is kind of out there because it's not even close to Christmas, but do you feel this? And I was explaining to him. And then I had another instance on an airplane. We were traveling, we're touring, and this baby was crying, and this mother was holding it, and of course when a baby's crying on an airplane, everyone else is looking at you. If you're the mom, it's like, and it's easy for everyone to be upset. But what's kind of going through my brain is, man, the baby is doing exactly what it's supposed to, and in a way, it's supposed to make us take notice, because that's a baby's way of letting adults, humans, know it needs something. Maybe its ears are hurting. I don't know. And it struck me, it was doing exactly what it was supposed to do. And I told Aaron, it was the other thing that made me think about that, because one of the things I said is that every child, cries with heaven's voice is what it was to me. And it made me experience it differently. It made me go, that little human is just trying its best. And it might be hard for us, but that's all it knows how to do. And it humbled me a little bit. And so we wrote several things into that song. And it's just, Glenn, you'll probably touch on it later, but I've really kind of been on a journey after leaving Nashville and not doing music for a while and studying horses. I mean, I traveled to work horses and horsemanship all over for years. And then I got back into music, and now we're making some of this new music and able to speak and say the things that I really want to say as an artist. And it is absolutely wonderful that you heard this and like the song, because it's given me an opportunity to really be the recording artist and singer and writer that I've wanted to be for a long time.
It's a gorgeous song, and I'm not going to be someone who is going to be down on all the Santa Claus stuff around Christmas time, because I love that too for the kids. But this one and songs like this are really what the season is all about.
Oh, thank you. That's kind of you to say. I think so many people feel that way, and actually, I think the season, in one way, the season allows us to openly express what we feel a lot. Some people maybe think that the season is the inspiration, but I think it's the hearts of people, who care, that compassion and love that exists all the time. And the season invites it, gives us an opportunity to just be that way. And we don't have to make any excuses. We can just be loving and care and it doesn't even matter what you feel religiously. It's there. The way we are as humans and babies, and the miracle of life is there.
Well, throughout your career, you have certainly been no stranger to Christmas and holiday type songs. And here we are at the tail end of 2024. We blinked and it's already holiday time. This is our Thanksgiving episode. Is this a pretty special time of year at the Ewing household too?
It is. It's a very special time. Now what's fun is that we're doing Christmas tours. We do shows during Christmas time more than ever. After Christmas Carol was one of the songs that I put out that was accidentally a single. Somebody flipped a 45 over and played it on the radio. That's what happened, and it just kept growing until it was a hit. And we had It Wasn't His Child as well, that Trisha Yearwood and Tim McGraw cut, and then Just a Kid that Ken Chesney put on his album and put out, and I of course have recorded versions of those songs as well, and it has sort of opened up doors for us to do some really wonderful Christmas shows that are quite, especially if kids come. It's fun when we have that happen. But for my wife and I, we live it now, and we have for the last 7 years. We live in a little cabin in the middle of heaven in Wyoming. I mean, it's honest to goodness, a very small cabin, but it's set, in the northwest corners of Wyoming. So I just say, if you take Yellowstone and the Grand Tetons, put them in a bucket and dump it in our backyard, that's where we live.
You're going to make me jealous, Skip.
Yeah, it's almost always full of snow. We get to cut our own Christmas tree, go and pick it out, cut it, put it up, and we have horses and dogs and cats and all kinds. We even have a deer, an older doe, who comes up to our window like it's a drive-through window out here because she's older, and so we have all. It's like my wife is a little bit. She likes to have the chipmunks come in and land in her hand and feed the birds, and she's just absolutely a beautiful spirit, and I don't know. It's like that around our house a lot. So at Christmas time, we love to put up the lights. We love to cook good food. We love to have friends over. We always love to have our four-leggers around us, if you know what I mean. I mean, we have two big dogs in a little bitty cabin. It's hilarious if you know about us and the dogs that we have. But it's an important time in the wintertime, and even though we're way out here, we have a lot of community that we recognize. And it's a reverent time as well, just to recognize all of our joys and blessings and what we've been given. And so, yeah, it's an important time for us, but mostly it's important for the togetherness. What other time of the year do most people, sing together? Except at church, right. if you're a churchgoer, But at Christmas time, if you go and have somebody will want that to happen. Around us anyway. If we have a gathering, it'll just happen. And even in our shows, it's one of the things, and it's part of what I love about Christmas time, but also something that I really love about our audiences, about those people and families who come out to the shows that we do. Because I do half of the show as all the hits and things that I've recorded, and with Horsepower 307, that's my band. It is really fun because those guys are so good, such great players. And then when we go into Christmas, we're able to do all of the Christmas hits that I've written, plus some other special ways of doing some Christmas things, and it always happens that everyone sings. I even say it at the beginning. I say, I know some of you have your arms crossed and your wife dragged you here. You don't really want to listen to the show. But I think before we're done, everyone here will sing with us. And inevitably, they do. And that is a power in the season. And so that's why I'm saying the season is inspirational. But there's something inside of us that wants to sing like that. And take that metaphorically or otherwise. But when we're allowed to, it feels good. And it brings up and nourishes the places that I think are the best parts of being human, where we're most beautifully human. And so, yes, it's a celebration at our house that we have that time.
Well, your house kind of sounds like a Disney movie, if I'm being honest. And you actually described like my dream scenario. I'd love to live in a place like that because it sounds picturesque and ideal for family gatherings during the holidays, like Thanksgiving. Are there any big Thanksgiving traditions at your house?
I have a couple of loves, things that I've worked hard at. One of those is horsemanship. And, of course, one of those is music, and the other one is cooking. And so I really enjoy cooking. In fact, when I was traveling and working at different ranches, we had, cooks leave in the middle of the night. And, they would say, hey, can you cook? I'm like, yeah, I can jump in, okay. And after a while, I got pretty good at it. In fact, even this past summer, my dear friend Hunter, who runs a famous guest ranch here, he couldn't walk, and he, because of his back, something happened. He's a young guy, too. He couldn't walk, and he was going to have surgery. They lost their cooks, and I was down in South Carolina, changed my schedule around, flew back and cooked for the ranch during the season this summer until he could get back on his feet. Huh. And so you would think, because of my love for cooking, that I would cook Thanksgiving. The only thing is, my wife loves Thanksgiving. I mean, she loves it. So she's like, I'm cooking Thanksgiving. I just say, okay. And I'm like, okay, what do you need cut up? I just turn into the best sous chef I can be. And she typically, cooks a turkey and all the fixings you can imagine, makes her own gravy. And sometimes she likes this, like a cranberry chutney that I make instead of just regular cranberries. She really likes that, so she'll have me kind of make that in advance and do that. But at our house, she cooks, and man, I love it. And we have a ball. I mean, we always have a ball because the dogs are everywhere, and they like it too. So it's very earthy at our house, Glenn. I mean, it's just. We don't have a lot of frills and we don't put on any airs. We still have to feed horses when it's freezing, and the dogs are everywhere, and we've chosen that, I think, because it's the most loving thing to do. We enjoy each other's company, and how that is, and that's again Thanksgiving. It's an invitation to be able to give thanks, and everybody allows it. And they accept it and appreciate it. And I have a lot of respect for those people who make an effort. Our family, typically, depending on who's with us, we'll go around the table and say, just pick 3 things that you're grateful for. And sometimes that's the grace that gets said. Just, while we're here and we're appreciating all of our gifts, tell us 3 things you're thankful for.
What's one of those things you're thankful for, Skip?
What I'm thankful for, one of the things I'm thankful for, is that people are still willing to listen. It's an important thing. It's harder and harder, I think, these days. Our attention span is shorter, and someone like me, I mean, I write. I write, and a lot of what I have to say is said with a lyric that I'm hoping matters, and sometimes you won't necessarily know all that I'm saying in a song unless you're able to listen to the lyrics. And I wouldn't have a career if people didn't trust my writing enough to go ahead and listen and go, well, now wait a second, I've liked other things that he's done. Let me see if I like this. And then listen. That is a gift. The gift of someone, even to your radio station. When you think about it, Glenn, someone is making that choice. God love them. I mean, they're going, hey, I like what Glenn puts together. I'm going to listen because that's something good in my life. But it's still a choice, and in that way, it's a gift.
Now, we're talking with Skip Ewing. He is indeed one of the great songwriters in country music history. And you've actually got a song out on country radio right now by Ernest. And Ernest is actually one of my favorite songwriters in current country music. It's a song called What If I Could? And you co-wrote it with another all-time great writer, and Dean Dillon. And I understand that you actually wrote it a long time ago, like more than 20 years ago. Is that accurate?
It is. And I think I want to say it was 96. I don't want to mess that up. I think it was about 1996. The only song Dean Dillon ever wrote. I don't even know Dean very well. I didn't even know if Dean liked me. It was weird. Because we got put together by our publishing company, and I had this little idea, a little, what if I could, but I can't, so I won't, but I want to, And I thought, well, that might be in Dean's wheelhouse to write, and we wrote it, and it may have gotten pitched a couple of times. Somebody along the line said they thought that it had been pitched to Straight, but I'm still not sure. But yeah, it was never recorded. And then Lainey Wilson heard it and did a special, a lost and found version that was exclusive to Apple Music. Then Apple asked me if they could use my demo. So you can actually go on Spotify or Apple and listen to the original demo that I went into the studio and recorded in '96, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah, you can hear that if you go to my Spotify to Skip Ewing or Apple's Lost and Found. And anyway, they chose 6 songs of all the songs in Nashville to do that with, because they were like, this is really has merit. Well, somehow or another, Ernest had heard that, and maybe heard it. Even I should have asked him. I talked to him the other day. Really, really, really nice guy. We texted back and forth about it, but I didn't ask him if he had heard it before Lainey cut it. Anyhow, he asked Lainey to come and do a duet with him on his new album.
Yeah.
And so Lainey went and sang the duet with Ernest that could be played anywhere, anytime. Ernest put the record out, and I guess people enjoyed the song so much that they wanted to put it out as a single. Well, so Ernest had to go back in and, sing the parts that Lainey had sung on his album, so he had a solo version of it to put out. And now it's a single. And, I mean, it's been the first week it was out, it was the most added song on country radio. I think it came out I don't know, forgive me if I'm wrong, something like the 10th, 7th, something like that of October.
Yeah.
And and so what you just can't expect that. And I think some stations are playing his solo version, and some stations are playing the duet version, and it's just a really, really fun time to have my own new music coming out while that's going on,
Yeah. And like I said, I'm a fan of Ernest, so I had bought his album, and that was one of the songs that stuck out as one of my favorites. I had no idea at that time that you had written it with Dean Dillon, because he's another one of my favorite songwriters. So it's just incredible. And for him, who's a great songwriter in his own right, or him and Lainey, I guess, to handpick one of your songs kind of goes back to what you were talking about with just the gift of people still listening.
Exactly. And kudos to Apple Music, too, for making that effort. I mean, they went, there's got to be a lot of songs in Nashville in these big catalogs that were left behind, that went undiscovered when they were written. And so a lot of effort was put into that. It's a little humbling to have people who are as talented as Lainey and Ernest, who are both exceptional songwriters, to have them record a song like that they didn't write, and just appreciate that we did. And I mean, Lainey was so kind. She I don't know Lainey, but Lainey called me one of the greatest songwriters of all time. I mean, wow. I've had some wonderful things said about the work that I've done, and I try not to buy into it. I just want to share what I have to share, and hopefully it keeps going. But I was really surprised and went, so Lainey Wilson, knows about me. She's listened to the songs that I've written. You never expect that. But wow, just wow, absolutely great.
I would agree with Lainey 100%, Skip. And I actually want to kind of get to know you a little bit more. I understand you were born in California, but you eventually made your way out to Colorado at some point in your life. Can you tell me about your background a little bit?
Sure. I was born in a town in California, and I graduated from high school in the same town in California, but didn't live there in between. Which is crazy. Yeah. So we traveled all over California, South Carolina, Colorado, and then back to California, and then several different places in California. And then basically, right after high school, I ran away to Nashville. I got a job as an ensemble singer in a country show there, and just up and left. I mean, I hitched a ride with a guy I didn't know, put a banjo, a guitar, couple pairs of jeans, and a shirt. I mean, that was really it, and left and went to Nashville and never went back. I would sing at the show, And then in between the shows we did, because we did, I don't know, 2 or 3 shows a day at this park. And I would sit in the dressing trailer, on the steps of the dressing trailer behind the stage, and work on songs and play. And some people heard them and liked them. And ultimately, I got invited to a writer's night. Some people heard it. They got offered a publishing deal the next day. I think that was 1985. First song I got cut was from George Jones, and then it just turned into George Jones, George Strait, Willie Nelson, Merle Haggard, and then it became the artists of the day. I mean, just, all these different people, Reba McEntire, Winona, Trisha Yearwood. It was really wonderful. I got invited to do an album as an artist myself, and I put out an album called The Coast of Colorado that did pretty well, had 5 top 20 singles on it. And then I was still getting songs recorded. And if I'm honest, for the next album that came out, they wanted me to change everything. I mean, it was like all of a sudden they wanted different music, and it wasn't. I was trying to please people with what I was writing, and the songs I wanted to record, I was told weren't any good. This is crazy to think about, but it's very true. And so here's a perfect example. You mentioned Colin Ray earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a song called Love Me.
Great song. Probably his biggest hit.
And, yeah, I played that for my producer for my second album. He told me it was terrible. It would never get played on the radio, and I needed to bring him something. Yeah. Otherwise, I might as well just forget about having an artist career because I won't have hits on the radio. Well, we didn't cut that because he didn't allow me to. And Colin Ray cut it, right? It was, it was number 1 for multiple weeks, nominated for Song of the Year. It's been played millions of times on the radio. It's still one of the most recognized songs that I've had a hand in writing, and that sort of just led to where I kept trying to please people making records, not feeling like I could be the artist I really wanted to be. And so I kept having songs cut. Brian White, 3 number 1s for Brian White in a row with, Someone Else's Star and Rebecca Lynn and I'm Not Supposed to Love You Anymore and on. And how great. I was really successful as a songwriter. And at about the time that I went, gosh, I'm having a hard time writing what I believe in for the artists who are recording. I don't know what to write, because if I'm writing what I really want to perform or be as an artist, which is really what I want, if I'm unfulfilled, what do I need to do? I had fallen in love with horses and realized that the time I was spending with horses, deeply endeavoring to be a good horseman, which is much, much different from riding a horse well. It's understanding it's really an effort in understanding and compassion. And gosh, I learned so much about myself, Glenn, that I sold everything in Nashville, my house, my furniture, everything but my art and my instruments. I went on the road and worked with horses and just feel like everything I did helped me to understand me better. It gave me an insight into all of my relationships, and that includes my relationship with the listeners for whom I was writing. Every animal I'm with, even in this conversation, it affects the way that I think about it. And ultimately, I met my wife in Texas while I was there doing some clinics, and then we traveled together. And ultimately, she was offered a job. She's an incredible photographer, videographer, and artist. In fact, she does all the new CD artwork and the videos that we've been doing. Or she does all of that stuff with me, and she got offered a job in Houston, and I said, I love Houston, I love playing in Houston, but I don't know if I want to live in the concrete area of Houston. I don't know how I'm going to work with horses and have my soul fulfilled there. I asked her on faith. I said, will you go and look at Wyoming with me? Just go and see, because it's the most beautiful place I know, and I feel more at home there, soulfully at home. And in her beautiful way, she said, yep. And we put our stuff in a we didn't have that much. We put our stuff in a storage unit in Texas, drove to Wyoming, and never looked back. It was 2 years, I think, before we went and got our stuff out of storage. But we came here. She got a job almost immediately, and we found this beautiful little cabin that they needed a caretaker for. It's on a historic ranch, and they needed a caretaker. So I took care of everything, and it was supposed to be here for about three to 4 months, and we've been here 6 years.
That's really cool. And I'm really happy for you that you were able to not only find a place like that, but also somebody to share it with. That's awesome. I wanted to go back to what you were talking about there with Colin. It's a story that I hear so often in doing these interviews with artists. You know, my producer wouldn't let me cut that. I had to make a deal to cut this song, this and that, you know, the label politics that happen. You've probably talked to Colin about this, but he told me that that song was a game changer for him. He called it a gift from God. And it's not like he was an established artist at that time. That was his first substantial hit, and it fell in his lap, and he got to cut it. So the fact that somebody else thought it was good enough to give to a brand new artist who hadn't done anything yet just kind of blows my mind.
You just never know. You know, he was a new artist, and everyone around him is looking for the right song. They had belief in him. And then if I look at it and go, and they chose my song, even though I didn't get to record it, even though, you know, my producer was very, very wrong.
Very.
You know, other people were gathered around Colin, who obviously is quite talented, and they chose that song to do for him. And my publishing company said, "We'll take a chance on a new artist. Sure, you know, brand new artist. Let's pitch him one of the best songs we think we have." All of those elements, they can get. You never know what's going to come of that. You know, so I was never oh my God, I missed out on a career because I didn't cut Love Me. That never was even a part of my thinking. It never did that. But I was super happy that all of the elements came together for Colin to have such a song. I can't go anywhere in the world without someone knowing the words to that. I mean, I've been to Greece, and, you know, they all knew how to sing it in English. I was in Fiji for a short time. They all knew how to sing it. I mean, it was crazy, you know? It's like you just don't even think about that. So for me, I'm grateful. I'm grateful to Colin. I'm grateful to the way things got put together, and it's another reason why I'm getting to talk to you, Glenn. I mean, you know, that's just the way that works.
And on the flip side of that, that's one more thing for me to be thankful for. I'm sitting here talking to the guy that wrote one of my favorite songs growing up as a kid. Now, after Colin cut that in 1990, everybody started recording your songs, and you were getting hit after hit after hit. The next one in line was probably Kenny Rogers in 91 when he recorded If You Want to Find Love, and he's listed as a co-writer on that.
He asked us if he could make a change for his record, which is a really interesting thing. He came to us and said, "I want to make this change for this record, and can I do that?" and this is Max D. Barnes and I. And Max, of course, is he was older at the time and very talented songwriter. And we said, "Yeah, okay." And then, this is honest, Kenny said, "Well, if I do that, that kind of makes me part of the writer on the song." We went, "Kenny, come on, man." So the honest to goodness truth is, we said, "All right, if that's what you want to do, you know, whatever." and so he's listed as the writer on that song, but only on his album.
I got you.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
if you see somewhere else, he's not listed as the writer. But it's true. He did want to do something different with it. We were okay with it.
So overall, a good experience working with Kenny Rogers.
Well, I toured with Kenny a lot, and he cut several songs of mine on different albums. And I had some very interesting conversations with Kenny. He was insightful, an insightful guy, smart. You know, had a long career, and I enjoyed it. He was always very kind to me. He said he had, you know, really wonderful things to say. He actually would. One of the quotes that he gave the press about me is he said something to the effect that there are poets and there are writers, and you know, Skip Ewing is both of those. Is all of that. You know, I mean, for Kenny Rogers to say that, golly. You know, he knows a lot. At the time, he knew so many writers and so many artists, and he was under no obligation to say something that about my talents or who I was as a human in a way. And so So once again, there you go. What an unexpected journey that was to spend time with Kenny.
Now, I'd say a poet is a perfect way to describe you, actually. The very next year, Randy Travis, big number one hit, If I Didn't Have You. What do you remember about writing it?
Well, Kyle Lenning was Randy Travis's producer, and Kyle is brilliant. I'd never met Kyle, but he called me one day, and he said, "Hey, Skip, this is Kyle Lenning, and we're in the studio with Randy Travis, and we have one of your songs. Can you come down and play guitar on it?" Well, I've played guitar on a lot of the demos and on my own record, some, and but I had never played on another major artist's record before. And I said to Kyle, I said, "What's up?" He said, "Well, we have this song of yours, If I Didn't Have You," and he said, "We just have a version of you and a classical guitar playing, singing it." And I said, I didn't even know where he got that. I was like, where did I? I don't think we had done a demo. I said, well, where did you get it? He said, "I don't know. Your publishing company had it." I said, "Okay." So I went down. Yeah. So I went down there and I played one of the other guitarists, classical guitar. I couldn't figure out why Kyle called me. I had to ask him, and he said, "Well, that riff, that thing you built the song around, it needs to be just like you played it." And it was, sort of natural to my style. I play guitar atypically sometimes, so that's good. It showed up on albums, right?
Uh-huh.
And so I went down there and played. Randy cut it, and it was the single, the single that was coming from the Greatest Hits album, and it ended up being a number one record. And the great thing about that, I got to meet Randy, who was just a wonderful person and artist. I enjoyed my time with him a good deal. And I met Kyle, and I said to Kyle, this will show you how sort of balanced on the knife edge of failure songwriting is. I said, "What would you have done if I hadn't been in town to record that?" He said, "We just cut something else." So that's how tenuous it is. But interestingly, Glenn, when I was about to do these new projects and make an effort, it was on me. I didn't have a record label to get this whole thing started again. And I told my wife after I was about 4 songs, maybe a little more, 4 or 5 songs into writing the music for the Wyoming album, I said, "You know who needs to co-produce this? I just know it's going to happen. It's got to be Kyle Lenning." And she said, "Do you know how to even reach him?" I said, "No, I don't really know him. Well, we've been in the studio with him 20-something years ago. That's all I know of him and what he's done since." And I called him out of the blue, and I said, "Kyle, I know this is a crazy thing, but here's my journey, and here's some of the new music I've got, and we're thinking about making an effort to be an artist, be the artist I've wanted to be. I know it'll be very difficult to try to get the word out that it's happening, and God knows what." I said, "But my wife thinks the material is really strong. Would you be willing to listen?" And he was very gracious, and he said, "Yeah, I'll listen." I said, "Okay." And he said, "But I want to tell you something. I'm only doing projects that I really feel connected to. Not a judgment about, whether the songs were good. That wasn't where he was coming from. He was like, I just do the things that I really feel strongly about. For me." I said, "I got it. I get it." He called me back in about an hour and said, "When do you want to cut?" I said, "All right, this means that Kyle Lenning and I are going to produce a record together." I was high, and then we did, and so now we did the Wyoming album, came out a couple of years ago. We cut a Christmas project that led to this song, the Whenever a Child is Born release, that's just now coming out for this Christmas to mainstream radio. That is just a crazy thought, It's a wonderful thought, because they're putting this out for this Christmas with knowing that we're going to have a single come out in January, from the new Road to California album, which Kyle also produced with me. So that's that's all the stuff that came from Randy Travis, and of course Randy cut several other songs. He cut a really funny song, did a great job on it called "Ants on a Log." If you have never heard that, it's really fun, and they did a great job on it. Yeah,
that rings a bell. The Ants on a Log. But yeah, he's got a laundry list. The Hole is another one of yours.
Yeah, The Hole, Stranger in My Mirror, the other things that were happening. Kenny Chesney, we ended up having hits and a bunch of songs, and gosh, yeah, a lot. It's been wonderful. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's go to '94 next with Doug Stone. By the way, Doug is a very underrated vocalist as far as country music vocalists go. Very good singer. So when you pair his voice with your lyrics, Little Houses, I thought turned out really, really good.
Well, I think Doug's voice. I've always thought Doug's voice was really unique, very identifiable, and very emotive. If that's a word I can use to describe that. But you could feel what he was singing. He believed in what he was about, and I always enjoyed it. You know, I mean, I think he had some health things that happened with him early in his career that kind of thwarted what might have given him even more notoriety, you know. But he did a great job on Little Houses. I like the song, and I like the sentiment of that. It fits right in with Linda, with the little cabin Linda and I live in. So
exactly, yeah.
I'm kind of back to living a song that I wrote years ago, and I have no complaints about that. But and when I met him, he's always a really nice person, really good person from everything I could tell. So I was very excited about that song.
Well, from one great vocalist to another, how about we go to Brian White next, who, as we mentioned, cut 3 huge songs of yours in a row. And I'd be remiss if I didn't start with Rebecca Lynn, because it was a little over 12 years ago now. My wife and I were driving in the car, trying to figure out what we were going to name our firstborn daughter when Rebecca Lynn came on the radio. And it dawned on us, that was it. We were going to name her Rebecca Lynn. So I've told Brian that story. I wanted to tell you that story and really get your reaction since you actually wrote the song.
Well, then we both have daughters named Rebecca Lynn.
I didn't know that about you, Skip. That's fantastic.
Yeah. But we wrote, when Don Sampson and I wrote that song, and we wrote it just because we thought it was a pretty name. Don't know where we came up with Rebecca. We just thought it was a pretty name, and I told Don, I said, that's a name I would name my daughter. And we talked about this song a good bit because, you know, it has a nursery rhyme element with Ring Around the Rosy, Pockets Full of Dreams and Posies. And as we were talking about that, we went, I think everyone feels that. You know, it's not something that everybody sang, but everybody knows that feeling as a kid, where those came from. And so we put that into a chorus unusually, and just wrote a song that was a story song in a way that used that name, and it talked about the journey of these kids who fell in love and then ended up having a daughter themselves. And I always said I would name my daughter that. So I did. When Rebecca's mom and I had a child, we named her Rebecca Lynn. And then after that, Brian White recorded the song, and it was a hit, and it was just about an amazing time because her mom and I got divorced, but in that time frame, she was just old enough to know that song was her song.
Oh, cool.
And so it played on country radio a lot in Nashville. And so when I was on tour or I was away, we had this wonderful connection where she knew it was her song. And so that will always be a really precious thing to me.
That's fantastic. And I've always wanted to ask you this because when I first heard the song all those years ago, I just had it in my head that it was going to turn out sad, like it wasn't going to work out between the main character and Rebecca Lynn. It ends up going the opposite way, obviously. They stay together, and they have a child, and it's kind of a happily ever after. When you first started out writing it, did you ever think of maybe going the other way with it and having it be a sad song that ends in heartbreak, or was it destined for the happy ending all the while?
Well, it's wonderful. I'm not sure we thought that through, but we always knew it was going to be a positive, a positive turnout. We wrote that chorus, that not a chorus, but the sort of bridge. When love is wrong, it dies, and that's the way it goes. But when it's right, love right. grows. And so I think we always knew it would be positive, and we weren't necessarily thinking negative. But maybe as listeners, we go, is this going to work out or not?
Yes.
And that's good. That's good. It holds your attention. You don't quite know what necessarily is going to happen with it, and So Brian did it. They made Brian and his team made excellent records. I mean, his vocals, the way the records were put together. Billy Walker Jr. was the guitar player on those sessions, and for instance, that intro to Rebecca Lynn that he played, it's played so excellently. Mm-hmm. It's just so definable that when you go and listen to Rebecca Lynn, if you hear that's Billy Walker. That's the brilliance of Billy Walker Jr., both as a producer and a guitar player.
Now, I know you wrote that, as you mentioned, years before Brian cut it, but he released it at around the same time as Someone Else's Star, which is another one that kind of has that sing-song, nursery rhyme element to it, which made me wonder, did you write those songs at around the same time, or is that just pure coincidence?
I don't know for sure. I wrote it with two different people. Someone Else's Star, I wrote with Jim Weatherly, and Jim is the same guy who wrote Midnight Train to Georgia, for instance. Oh. And his house is full of antiques at the time. I mean, it was like every space in his house was an antique. It was just filled with all this furniture, and he had a piano there, and we were talking about this idea of Someone Else's Star, like wishing on someone on the wrong star. But then, as we looked into it, I thought this is cool, and I had an idea. The reason it has that element the same as Rebecca Lynn is for a completely different reason. I said, if we're going to write something with a star, I said, I'm a classical music lover in a big way. Mm-hmm. I just think I listen to everything, like everything, to learn, constantly learn. And I said, what if we thematically take a song and then use that as a kind of hide that in there so it's there, and then write the melody around that and have the changes support the melody of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Let me mess with this on your piano, see if there's a way to do it. Mm-hmm. And literally played Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, changed the chords, then used those chords and wrote the melody for Someone Else's Star. Wow. And so if you play Someone Else's Star, you play the record, and when he's singing Alone Again Tonight, all that, you can play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star all the way through it. It's not, you won't necessarily hear it on the record, but it's there as soon as you know it. So when we play it live, I always say, here's what happens. And so I will sing it, playing the original chords, but also play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star on the guitar while I'm playing the chords and singing Someone Else's Star. And that's kind of where that came from, was just sort of an experiment, just to see if there was if something that simple could be supported as a theme underneath what we had going on.
I like to fancy myself as a production wizard, so when I play that on the show, I might have to play around with that, see if I can't do something with that. That's very interesting. I had no idea, but that's mm-hmm. really cool. I want to go to, you talked about Kenny Chesney. Me and You is another one of my favorite love songs of all time.
Well, that's the first song Kenny recorded that I wrote. The rest of the songs that Kenny recorded, we wrote together. So he recorded Me and You, and we were at the same publishing company for a time. He and I wrote at the same publishing company, which was at the time, it went from Acuff being Acuff Rose to the Opryland Music Group, and then now it's Sony. They bought them out, but the majority of our catalog is that, and that's how we met. And this is, he hadn't become a big star yet. He was all about, doing everything he could to be the star he is now. And so he cut that after we had a hit on that. That's when he came to me and said, "Well, we should write." And I said, "Okay." And from that came several songs. One of those being "You Had Me From Hello." So. It's amazing. It's amazing the roads, the pathways, and connecting lines.
Is it true? Because I've heard Kenny say in interviews before that You Had Me From Hello was inspired by Jerry Maguire.
Oh yeah. And in fact, he called me and said, "Hey, you know that line in Jerry Maguire?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, we need to write that." And I said, "Everyone's going to write that." And he said, yeah, but we're going to be first. And so literally we got together very quickly, wrote that song, and he cut it and handed it out. So if anyone else had written it, he wanted to be in front of it, you know. And so, you know, there's like little things about that was fun. At the time, I said to Kenny, I said, would you be amenable to not having it be you had me at hello, and let's use you had me from hello, because I didn't feel like at in a chorus sung like we were talking about singing. At was not lyrical. The vowel sound wasn't supportive as being able to say from hello with a little bit of a longer sound. So it's a subtle difference, but that's one of the things that's kind of fun about that song. We decided to make it say from hello so that it would so that at wouldn't be in the middle of that line.
You made the right choice. It allows you to maybe carry that note just a tad longer. It just sounds better phonically. Yeah, I think that's definitely the way to go.
Little things like that that's the soul of songwriting, I think, is to, you know, because it's going to, the lyric is going to be sung, and the way it falls on your ears and all of that. I'm a pretty I would say I'm a deep thinker. And anymore, especially writing by myself, because almost everything, well, I could say everything, because I haven't written with anyone since I started doing these new projects, except for you know, alone. I really like to think deeply, you know, about songs and what goes into them and why, because I think that the people who listen, they can feel things, whether they know it was thought about or not. We feel things when we listen, and I think that you can feel the heart behind something when you listen to a song. Sometimes, give you an example. When Brian cut "I'm Not Supposed to Love You Anymore," at the time, Bonnie Raitt had that song on hold.
Oh wow!
And hold, on hold, of course, means that the artist is asking you, please don't play this for anyone else because we're planning on recording it. And this was when she was working with Don Was, and I was so excited. I mean, she was on my top 10 list of people I wanted to have a song, you know, record one of my songs. And I've had quite a few of those people record songs, not all of them, but quite a few. But Billy Walker called me and he said, "Skip, I heard that song that Bonnie has on hold. You have to give that to me for Brian." I was like, "Billy, this is Bonnie Raitt." He said, "I know, but if you give it to me for Brian, we'll have a third number one in a row." And I said, "You can't guarantee that, Billy. Otherwise, everything you put out would be a number one." He goes, "I know, but believe me, we're set up to have that happen." I said, I talked to my publishing company, and we weren't sure that Bonnie would record it. And just out of loyalty and care for Brian and Billy, and it just was the right thing to do. So we said, okay, since we don't have a firm commitment from Bonnie, go ahead. And they recorded it. Of course, it was a number one. But he called me from the studio, and he said, "Hey, Skip, I know that you used the word Sherry in the song because Bonnie was going to sing it. What name do you want us to use for a guy singing this song?" And I was able to say to Billy that I didn't write that for Bonnie Raitt to sing. I literally wrote it for me to sing. It's quite a personal song in a way. This was happening when I was getting, when I was nearing my divorce. I knew it was coming, and there was a great deal of my own heart in this song. But what I said to him is, I said, the reason we chose Sherry as a woman is because I felt like a guy, and in this case it would be Brian, who was singing about loving a woman so authentically, so completely and honestly, and realizing that he was losing her and saying, "I'm not supposed to love you anymore," and we never say it, but of course he does. That if he talks about a woman who's a friend of his telling him that if that was that situation for her, she'd be out, on the town and, finding something else, a distraction or whatever, that whole feeling. And yet, if a guy is emotionally mature enough to have a woman as a friend who can talk to him like that. And there's no elements of, him wanting something to do with her because he's genuinely in love with this woman. I said, whether it's seen or not, there's a power in that. If you know a woman said this to this guy who's singing this song, I think it lends to his emotional maturity and the believability of the character, the person he is, singing this song. And then Billy said, okay, we'll use Sherry.
See, those are the stories, Skip, that this show is all about. I love hearing that kind of stuff. Everything from Bonnie Raitt almost had it to the lyric there. And it kind of sounds like maybe going back to breaking some rules, maybe you broke a little bit of a rule of conventional wisdom that they were trying to change back to conventional wisdom, that you were like, no, let's just keep it the way I wrote it. I love that.
Yeah, well, it's just that those are the ways I think about lyrics. How does it resonate? Whether or not someone knows there was thought behind it, or the rhyme scheme, how those things poetically move. So many of that, I love that, and sometimes it's like either being a sculptor or a painter, and there's a dimension to it that I love, especially when we tackle subjects and songs go ways that you wouldn't expect. And that is so if someone listens, they go, hopefully I'm giving them something that is unique and different. And they go, oh man, that's so cool. If I can do that, I am thrilled. But it is for me anyway, it's a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of work. And I like to think of it, there's a lot of love that goes into that, because I am thinking about the people who will listen to the song. I have to think about, who would sing the song. Like, for instance, if it's singable, like changing at to from, those kinds of things. But yeah, I love it. It's part of it's what moves me, and I'll keep trying to do that for the music landscape that I get to be a part of, that is supported as long as I can.
There's no doubt that you're a romantic at heart. You have to be, with all these amazing love songs that you've written. Another one being Clint Black's Something That We Do in '97, which is ever the popular choice at weddings, I'm sure.
Yeah, it still gets played at a lot of weddings, that's for sure. Yeah. You said something about being a romantic. One of the things I think is that romance, really something that is romantic, for me, there's an element of it's romantic if the only thing that is there is the two of you. If it's about just the two of you, and it's positive and loving, that is what ends up being romantic.
Yeah.
So you introduce other elements that's not the two of you, and it's not romantic anymore. It's like a table that is just the two of you at the end of a pier by the ocean. The element to that is it's so romantic. It's a beautiful place. It would be a beautiful place if it wasn't just the two of you. It wouldn't be as romantic, though. That's an interesting thing about Something That We Do, is that Clint had his album finished, and he said to me, "We're not going to be able to get this on the album because it's already finished. We'll have to do something else with it, if we get it." Well, ultimately, after we wrote it, we called Joe Galante from the kitchen, and we were at Clint's house in L.A. And Joe said, "Well, how soon can you get to the studio to play guitar on this?" Because I had come up with that, all the guitar part, that interestingly tuned guitar, a sort of open D tuning. That's what I handed Clint. He got up in the morning and I played that, and I said, "Clint, I think this is kind of in line with that love is a verb thing we were talking about." And then so that's another song I ended up playing guitar on. But when we were writing it, I said to Clint, it strikes me that this is a song that we have to be vulnerable on. This has to be just, you about who you're singing to. And the vulnerability element is important. This can't be I already know. This has to be I'm learning as I go, trying to be better, and I'm making mistakes, but I'm dedicated. It's something that we do, and it's something that I'm still doing. And he was really cool. A lot of like for instance, he wrote "Better Man," "Leaving Here a Better Man," and that song comes from "I've Already Learned It," which is a very strong place to come from. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was really great of Clint to go, yeah, I think you're right, and to come from a very vulnerable space, from a very vulnerable heart space, to write that song together. And yeah, if you go back and listen, I think you'll see what I mean. But we talked about everything. We talked about all the love relationships you can think of, including animals, because I'm that way. I think that we actually decide how we're going to love all the beings in the world, including one another and ourselves. And but we needed to write it as a wedding song because that's what really shows commitment in a relationship, and that's a different effort. A long-term love, making the effort, that kind of effort, and a long-term love, and we all need to do that in order to be successful in our marriages and relationships.
So over the past couple of days, Skip, I've been going over your catalog and refreshing my memory on all these amazing songs that you've written. Many of them, most of them, I count among my favorite country songs of all time. But I will admit there was one song that I came across that I had forgotten all about, and I'd even forgotten about the artist who sang it. David Kirsch, "If I Never Stop Loving You." I was like, now what's this song? I put it on, and the memories came flooding back, and I couldn't even believe I forgot about it. That was a big hit right around 97 or so.
Thanks. Yeah, I thought David sang a great record on that. And we, and for instance, that has a similarity to "Would If I Could." And I like the sort of poetic weaving of using the words to carry, between alliteration and inner rhyme and all those things to lead it differently than you might think. And "If I Never Stop Loving You," it sort of has opposition in it. "If I never stop loving you, will you never stop wanting me to? Say you won't, and that's what I will do." Right. For forever, with a heart. If you start and end every day, forever, never wanting me to go away, all I'm ever going to always do is never stop loving you. And those kind of things that trip along interestingly, I like those. They're almost like little puzzles to figure out how to do well. And it's the same thing with "Would If I Could." I would if I could, but I can't, so I won't. But I want to. I'd love to say yes, but best if I don't. Though I'd like to. That kind of space. I've always found those to be fun.
I'm talking to a lyrical genius right here. I mean, it is. It's quite amazing. And I can't believe I forgot about the song because it's so darn catchy, too. And I remember loving it when I was a kid. I mean, I'm 38 now. I was probably 11 when that song came out, so my daughter's age now. But, yeah, it's just so catchy. I absolutely love that song. Can't believe I forgot about it.
Well, you reminded me. I when I go and play shows now, of course, I put a band together called Horsepower 307. And these guys are horsepower because that is what has driven me to this place. If I could put my name in it, and my wife's name in it, then that would be the only other element. But I couldn't figure out a way to do that. So horsepower is a big element. And 307 is the area code for the entire state of Wyoming.
Really? Just one area code? Huh.
One area code. There's less people. I bet there's less people that live in the whole state of Wyoming than live in Cape Girardeau. I don't know how many people live in Cape Girardeau, but there's barely 700,000 people in the whole state of Wyoming.
Okay. Well, we're not quite that big, but yeah, I see where you're going with
it. Okay. So anyway, that's a fun band to put together. The reason I say that is that what I'll sometimes do, though, is before I bring the band out, I'll just walk on stage and open for myself. If we don't, I'll just go, came out, I have too many hits to play them all, and I have all this new music that we do. So I go out and just enjoy the audience. Doesn't matter how big it is. It can be a huge audience, and it still seems to work. I'll go out and I'll play some songs that people are familiar with, and I'll let people call stuff out. I will, play pieces and parts of a whole bunch of different songs. And now that you brought that up, I haven't played that one out as much. So now we've got shows coming up here in the next week, and now I'm going to play that. I'm going to make sure I put part of that song into what I do, because I haven't played that in a while. So thanks for reminding me. See, I forgot about a hit I wrote. That's crazy.
I can't wait to dust it off and play it on the show, because I'm a little embarrassed that I haven't played it yet. Like I said, I've been doing the show for 5 years. I should have been on that one already, and just I whiffed on that one. So,
well, and I don't know what happened to David. I don't know how many hits he had. I think that was a number one. If not, it was definitely a top 5.
Yeah, I think
it might have been number 1.
I think it was number 3 according to Billboard. So whichever chart you're looking at, we look at Billboard. Yeah. I think it was number 3.
Yeah, at the time we had R&R and Billboard, and
right.
So I never knew which chart to look at. I didn't worry about the chart. I really didn't. I couldn't do anything about it. So, but I did like the song, and
that was his last top 5 hit. Skip. He didn't have another one after that. He did have a few before that. But, 96,
that's
97.
That's the only song he's cut of mine, I think. I don't think he cut anything else of mine that I remember. But, yeah. Now, if you reminded me of that, Glenn, I'm gonna play that at the shows at the shows when I open for myself.
Well, I'm glad I can do that. I would say your biggest hits are on the slower side. It seems like the love songs or the sad songs, but you do have a few that get up and go, such as The Hole, like we mentioned for Randy Travis. I mean, that one's kind of more of like a honky tonk get up and go. Yeah.
If I didn't have Views the same way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So Randy cut 2 of them.
And the thing is, there's another very famous songwriter. His name is Hank Cochran. He wrote everything from Make the World Go Away to The Chair. He's no longer with us anymore. But I heard him say once. He said, "Look, I'll say to you, Glenn, what is your favorite song of all time?" And he'd stop you and go, "It doesn't matter. It's a ballad."
That's true.
And so he, at one point, I kind of took that as, write the strongest thing you have to write. And so oftentimes what feels like the strongest thing I have to write are ballads. Love Me, the staying power of that. Even like the Gospel According to Luke that I wrote, it was a top 10 record, but it's 25 years later, and it still gets requested every show that I play, no matter what. And, You Had Me From Hello, Something That We Do. These are all, for me, powerful subject matter. So I still made an effort to write up-tempos, like you hear. There's a lot of up-tempo in the new material that like on the Wyoming record, and especially on the Road to California album. There's a lot of up-tempo material, but I also get to take chances with it. I mean, in other words, I get to say some things you might not expect. I wrote a song called Road Dog, for instance. It's literally a dog singing the song, going, man, because like our dog Shotgun, he's 100 plus pounds, half Aussie and half Pyrenees. And, there's not a place in our house that doesn't have white dog hair on it. And remember, we live in a little bitty place. He takes up space. And I walked out to my truck, and I looked in my truck. It's gray interior, There's dog hair everywhere in my truck. And there's smudges on the windows from his nose where he likes to ride up there in the shotgun seat. That's why he's named Shotgun. He's always like that. He wants to be in the front. And so I wrote a song about that. I played it for my wife, and I said, you know why? I think there are a zillion people who love their dogs so much that's just part of having a dog. I mean, I say we have dog hair is a condiment and a fashion statement at our house. But I was able to write a song like that, going, I think there are people who know about that they love that about their dogs everywhere, and their dogs travel with them, get in the truck or get in the car, and they go down the road, and it's something that if you see images from. So I wrote a song like that on the new album. This is just now we can't play a show without playing it, and it's just it's just up tempo fun. I make a joke about fried chicken in it, and then other stuff that's about a car, a car wreck being kind of like getting your heart broken, and just so I'm, like I said, I'm getting to kind of stretch out and make music I wouldn't make to try to pitch. I wouldn't write that to please a publishing company and say, who's going to record this? Is this going to be a Jelly Roll singer, or is this going to be, a Lainey Wilson song, or is this, whoever? No, it's going to be a Skip Ewing record, which is hopefully unique to me. So I found that, I guess, with more freedom, I'm writing whatever I would like to write that I think has merit, and there's still some very strong ballads, like "Whenever a Child is Born." That's as deep of a ballad as you can get, and hopefully universal in that way. But that was the only way that could be written, Well,
from one deep ballad to another, how about "Wish You Were Here"? Cut by Mark Wills in 1999. Another all-time favorite of mine, and I always told myself, if I ever get the chance to interview whoever wrote that, I'm going to ask about the inspiration behind it. So here we are. I'm talking to Skip Ewing on the Honky Tonk Time Machine. What made you put pen to paper on that one?
The woman that was part writer on this with Bill and I, she had the idea of there being a postcard from heaven. That's where that started. It was just the idea of a song that was receiving a postcard from heaven somehow. And I was intrigued with that idea. My manager at the time, he called me and said, she told me this, and with an idea like that, we wouldn't take that and do something with it. It was someone else's idea, And so I said, well, I'm writing with Bill Anderson today, and so we invited her to come and talk through. And I had messed with it in my head for a while and kind of came in going, I think I have a way to approach this. You guys want to get together, and so we did, and that's where that came from. Was just the idea of a postcard from heaven. And
you say Bill Anderson, we should clarify, that is the Whisperin' Bill Anderson.
Whisperin' Bill Anderson.
That's really cool. That's awesome.
And the important thing is that it says the same thing, that it would make the same "wish you were here, wish you could see this place." And if that's about the beach or it's about heaven, it's the same.
Yeah.
So it could have actually been heaven the whole time. That's something we couldn't know. So suspending reality like that is always it's always a bit tricky. So we have to do it in a way that I feel we have to do it in a way that makes sense and allows for there to be something supernatural about that. And when it is supernatural, I don't feel like we can take too big a steps and just go anything is possible. But when we're talking about someone losing their life and trying to reach across the divide between life and death, heaven and earth, as humans, I feel like we want there to be that. We want love to reach that far. It's the same, for instance, as Love Me. It's a similar reaching across the boundary of such things, knowing that love can live, and our souls as humans. However you take that, I believe is another, for instance, that I wrote for Diamond Rio. I don't know if you remember that song. It was a number one, but I want to say it was in 2000 or something.
2002.
Yeah,
so we're actually coming up on the anniversary of its release, November 18th. So when this show airs, it'll be around 22 years since its release.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, so that, for instance, is something that, like, from my personal experience. But the reason I wrote that song is I got a piano, and it was pretty much the only thing in my house when I got it. And I played every note I could possibly play on the piano. I just was so happy to finally ever be able to afford an acoustic piano. And if you push the sustain pedal down on a piano, of course, you play something, it just rings and rings and rings and keeps ringing, right? Mm-hmm. If you push the sustain pedal, if you let off the sustain pedal, it stops. But if you let it off quickly and push it down again, the notes are still playing. And it's like, that's crazy to me in a really cool way. It didn't actually mute them. And then I thought, where do those notes go? We play notes, and they're in the air. Where do they stop? Or do they? And I know that's a sort of a rhetorical question, but it made me realize that there are people who have played notes in my life, if you will. They have literally moved me the way music can move us. And much of those, thankfully, much of those are positive, and they still resonate with me. The way that, and it could even be, an experience you had, for instance, with a horse or a dog, or whatever was miraculous in your life, grandmother, grandfather, best friend, stranger, those notes keep playing. And as I put that together, thinking of it like a person who played notes that were still sustaining in me, I began to think about the people who were gone. They were no longer with us. And those notes were sustaining in me. And it's a way that they were still alive. They were still had an influence on the world. And there's a responsibility and an opportunity in that as for us. And so when Donnie Keys and I were supposed to write the next day, I said, Donnie, I've got this little descending thing, like if we think about angels, but whether there's actual angels or whether those angels are the resonance from what we've been affected by with people, or if we've lost someone and we still love them, there is great power in that. And I said, so are we able to, can we write a song like that? Is that too big of a stretch? And I said, I think a lot of people. And I got to tell you, Glenn, I got so many, so did Diamond Rio. They got so many emails and messages from people who said that was the way they handled the death of a family member. It was the way they got through it. What a humbling thing. What an amazing thing to strike a chord, to be a writer and have someone, gosh, put the words to your song on someone's, headstone, to write you and say, this is how I was able to process the death of my son. That's not expected. I could never think that, but when we're saying, you're in the very heart of me, you've become a part of me, and I'll hold you even longer if I can.
Like a music note. It's crazy. I never thought of that.
Mm-hmm. Similarly, whatever they played, that it just was an inspiration to recognize the energies. And I'm not trying to be esoteric, don't get me wrong here. But there's literally an energy. There's an effort, just like something that we do. Love is something we have to make an effort to do. And when people have made an effort to love you in their lives, sometimes we're like way years later and we go, oh my gosh, they were loving me and I didn't even know it. I was too young. I was too, I didn't even realize what they were giving me while they were here. I feel like we do that with our parents. So I don't know. I dig into songs and think of things like that, hopefully endeavoring to have it there for some of us to discover if we're willing to listen. And I just pray that people will, give me a chance and listen to the songs, the new music that I'm putting out. And as they do, I'm getting to talk to people on the radio like you, Glenn, again, at major country stations, and I'm excited. I'm excited about it and really appreciative, very grateful.
Well, and I know I'm keeping you for a long time here. The reason I'm asking you about all these songs is I do plan to play them on the show. I want to hear the stories behind them, and I know our audience does too. So I do have just a couple more to ask you about if you still have time.
No, go ahead, man.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. Put Your Hand in Mine, Tracy Byrd. That was one that was not a top 10 hit for Tracy, but I just talked to him earlier this year, and he was telling me how much he still loves that song, and he makes it a point to play it in his show to this day.
Gosh, I thought that was a top 10. Maybe it's on Billboard, but was on R&R. I don't remember.
I don't know about R&R. It was 11 on Billboard, so it would stand to reason that R&R, it was probably a little higher. Yep.
Yeah. Jimmy Wayne Barber had the idea of a Put Your Hand in Mine about that. And he was just signed to a publishing company that I was at and had told me about the idea. And I said, again, that was one of those, I said, let me think about that. I just rolled it around. I forget how long. It was a while. Then I called him and I said, I think I might know a way to approach this that would make sense and have, the ability to make an impact. And then he came in and we wrote that. And then Tracy Byrd cut it. But yeah, that's where the original idea came from. But I didn't know what to do with it at first. That took me a little while to then think about the the hand and the magnet on the fridge, and how to really tie that into a story. But kids are amazing. Kids are amazing, and they do something that I try to do. For instance, in performing music and offering music, which is to get out of my own way and not have a filter between my heart and, like, I like to not think. I don't want to think about what I'm doing. I just want to feel what I'm doing and allow and just be who I really am, saying what I think is real. And kids will do that, surprisingly so. They just are. They don't think about it, and I think that is a immensely powerful thing, just to be true. And when people offer that to one another, it's again another powerful gift. Even when it's difficult news, even when it's difficult, it's still powerful and has the potential to be very healing. So that's all. I guess that's always a thought in my life, present in my awareness, and part of where that song would come from.
On speaking of kids and speaking of difficulty with kids, every other weekend, 2008. That's kind of the sad part of it. When parents can't be together, that was such an amazing song that Reba cut, and then you cut a duet with her on it, and then Kenny Chesney did as well. There were two versions out there. One was the radio version, one was the album version, if I remember correctly, right?
Right. Yeah. And that's something I lived. I mean, that was just something that I had lived and literally was in the midst of, and that struck me how limiting the whole every other weekend, relationship was with children, and how in so many ways it doesn't make sense to develop and steward and cultivate the kind of relationship, and also the connection with a child that you love so much. And that's not everybody's journey. It was part of my journey, but so is the fact that so often there is a reason why we loved someone and ended up having a child with that person, and a marriage in a lot of cases. And during that, there's still those elements still come up. The elements of even now what you're afraid to say if you still love that person, or would have worked out differently, or want that for the children but don't know how to do it for the adults. And that's just the lives of a lot of people, unfortunately, in our society. And so we just really dug into that to be able to offer. And when you get to things like where the child, we're talking about cutting the crusts off the grilled cheese sandwich. Well, that's specific, and at the same time, it's also a bit universal.
Sure.
Lot, for whatever reason, a lot of kids, that's what they want, and then it's still not the way mom makes it. And what are you gonna do with that? And so I feel like sometimes when we touch on things, which is where we are all similar. If we can touch on the ways, or I feel when we write songs, ways that, for instance, someone listening is able to put their life, leave space. I always say space is love. Leave space somehow in the song so that we can be specific to evoke an image, but there's enough space for someone to be able to put their own journey in it, to relate their own journey to that song, which then has a resonance and goes, oh, I feel that. I get that. I totally understand that.
How many parents must have resonated with that song? But then also on the flip side of it, I lived that as a child. I came from divorced parents who divorced when I was 3, so I lived the other side of that. So that one resonated with me and many other kids who were in my same situation too.
Exactly. And so lines like, I pick up the love we made in both my arms, is one of the things that every other weekend, with very few exceptions, I pick up the love we made in both my arms. That also sends a message about how the person feels about the child. They recognize it. So for instance, that's a parent who is, because of their love for the child, it's even stronger. And we all know that there are some people who don't make the effort to have that relationship with their children. They don't.
Yeah.
And that's sad. But that person couldn't sing this song. And so by introducing some lines like that, I felt like that line, for instance, that is about him and his wife and his child, all of it, and about his way of viewing that incredible being, and then how painful it still is, and probably always will be.
Now, do you remember the story behind why there were two different versions? Did Kenny have maybe another single out at the same time, and the label didn't want two of his songs out at the same time, or was it something more simplistic than that?
I'm not privileged to all the behind the scenes, politics about that. I got invited to do a duet with Reba on a song I had written, and I was super excited. They never put it out for sale. They just put it out to radio. So I don't even know if you can go listen to which is very strange. I don't know all the politics, but I was sure proud of the duet Reba and I sang. Yeah. Definitely.
I bring it up because for instance, I think that might be why Lainey Wilson is not singing with Ernest on the radio version of What If I Could. Her label really wants to push 4x4 by You right now, and having another song of hers out at the same time could affect it.
Well, and similarly, I already know some radio stations are playing the duet version.
Yeah.
They're playing the duet version, whether it's Ernest single by himself, and they both have merit. I love what Lainey, what Lainey is. I just love Lainey's voice. And Ernest, I think Ernest has he has a vulnerability when he sings. It's again one of those places where I think he allows what he feels to be there. And that vulnerability is a strength in his artistry, I think. But yeah, I don't know. They can play whatever version they would like to, and that's the same thing that happened with with Every Other Weekend. And Kenny at the time was he's a superstar. If you're a radio station and you have a choice of which one to play, I expect sometimes you play Kenny's version, maybe you play mine, like Kix Brooks on his radio show. He let me know. He goes, "Man, I just played yours." He just really liked the Reba the version that Reba and I did. So that's what he played on the countdown show he had, and whenever they played it, I thought that was funny. I've always thought he was a good guy.
What If I Could? Ernest, Lainey Wilson, that's out now. We're playing it here on K103. The new Christmas single coming soon to K103 when we start playing Christmas music very soon. Whenever a Child is Born. Expect to be hearing that from Skip Ewing. And you've mentioned some new projects coming in the new year, I guess. Once Christmas is done, we'll hear another single from you, correct?
That's right. It's coming in January. We'll have another single that's actually a release to radio, which we're excited about.
Probably don't want to let the cat out of the bag too much. I don't know how much you want to tell me about that song.
The thing is that there's more than one that could be the option at this point. We think we know, but we haven't completely committed. And one of the reasons is, it's looking like a lot of stations are going to play Whenever a Child is Born, which will give us an opportunity to get some feedback and maybe some programmers. I mean, just to tell you, what happens. Maybe we're able to share some new music, because you can listen to the whole Road to California album. It's out. You can listen to the whole thing on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen. And please follow me on socials. It's such an important thing these days. It gives us a chance to let you know what's going on, and plus we put some really fun. We do some fun social things, releases and performances and little videos and. But yeah, so then someone goes, "Wow, we could really play this," or maybe this has power, or maybe we should put this one out first. So I think it's always a bit in flux until we make a final decision. We think we know, but it's like, we've got a couple months before we have to be in full swing on a decision.
Well, I can't wait to hear whatever you land on for that new single in January. And like I said, we'll be spinning this Christmas song for sure whenever a child is born. I can't wait to, dive into this, start doing some editing and put your show together for our Thanksgiving episode, Skip. I really appreciate you taking so much time with me today. It means the world to me.
Oh, thank you, Glenn. I'm happy to do it. And as Thanksgivings go, I hope that you are surrounded, and this is for you and everyone listening, Glenn. I hope that you are surrounded with love that nourishes your heart and your spirit, your soul, your relationships, your family, and that you find joy in whatever situation you find yourself in. And one thing that I love about Thanksgiving is that we share it with so many other people. We're all giving thanks at the same time. What a wonderful energy to put into the world. So love to you and all those you love, and happy Thanksgiving.
Very well said, and I wouldn't expect any different from a lyricist such as yourself, Skip. Happy Thanksgiving to you, my friend. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good, Glenn. Thank you very much. Let me know if you need anything else.
I absolutely will. Skip Ewing, legendary songwriter, hopefully, future Country Music Hall of Famer. I think he'll make it in at some point. And our latest guest in the Honky Tonk Time Machine on K103.